I looked around and saw that no one is willing to bring adoption into light. Children who are adopted fear to be recognized as adopted. Who else can understand this feeling better than me, having been adopted at the age of 6 months internally in the family? Having faced many challenges as I grew up, I never had anywhere to turn to and no one to talk to, especially about my experience on adoption. These are the words of none other than Farhan Yusuf, who wrote a book, Dropped to the World, Adopted by Fate. Farhan Yusuf is a successful businessman and a writer as well, and the author of the book that I just mentioned to you. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about adoption or raising in a different setup apart from the family setup that we are accustomed to. And joining me tonight in this very special, very intense episode discussing this topic are two gentlemen, very well-versed experience, talking from their own experiences about this whole issue of being raised in a different setup different setup from the one that we are accustomed to of the family setup. From my right side is none other than the Sheikh, the one and only, the Sheikh who dunks. Nowadays, he accepts to be called the Sheikh, who was there in the first episode, still with us, almost becoming a resident panelist. We always love him on the show, Sheikh Abu Najma.
Naam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And on my left, the author, the writer, the businessman that I was telling you about, Farhan Yusuf. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Gentlemen, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, remember 40497 is our SMS line, Horizon TV Kenya is our Facebook and Instagram, and at Horizon TV Kenya is our Twitter handle. Follow us on our social media platforms. Let us know what you think on this topic. Sheikh Abu Najma, Karibu.
Asante.
Sheikh, tell us about your story.
No, my story is very simple. Many people in our today's world, it's a world whereby, it's a world of stereotyping. People see you and they judge you, or they think you are this and that, or maybe because of your dressing, or maybe because of your popularity and such kind of things. But basically, when you talk about Abu Najma is a person who was already, in 1980, he was already in an orphanage. When I didn't have my parents, so I was put in the orphanage by the government, by the children's department. So from the children's department to the orphanage, children's home. And we were like, roughly like 100 kids in that children's home. So
at what age approximately?
I was like, that is maybe like 6 years old. 6 years old. Wow. 5 years old, roughly there. I can't remember well, yes.
Farhan,
yes.
Tell us about yours.
Well, in my case, I was 6 months old when I was adopted, and I got to know I'm adopted when I was 9 years old, and that was in school. My parents never disclosed that to me.
You mentioned you adopted at the age of 6.
6 months
6
old.
months.
Yes, 6 months old. I was only 6 months old when I was adopted. When I came into to Kitale, Kenya, I grew up there. I started schooling, and at the age of 9, you can say 8 to 9, I was somewhere in between there, when a fellow classmate actually attacked me and said that I was adopted. And I didn't know what adoption is at that particular time. So what I did was I asked him, what do you mean? And he's like, you were actually abandoned by your parents, and so the parents who you call your parents actually picked
Not
you
your
up.
Parents.
So, you are not their child. And that was a very big shock for me, because, the people you call mom and dad, and suddenly you get to know that they are not your parents. And you're just 9, you're just 8, 9 there. It affects you psychologically, and there's also a gush of anger in your mind, that what exactly happened, what's wrong? I mean, why was I abandoned? There are a lot of questions that come out in your mind and in your heart. So similarly, in my case, I had a lot of questions in my mind, but I was not able to ask my parents, because the minute I approached my mom, she was very curious, and she was very possessive. So she really did not answer me the way I wanted to, and so I realized that she was getting upset.
What are some of the questions that you're asking?
The day I was told I was adopted, I was picked up from the lake. When she came to pick me from school, I asked her, Mom, I just got to know that I was picked and I'm not your child. And you could see her, shivering. She was trembling. She didn't know what to do. She was trying to change the gears because she was driving, and she was not able to do that, and she was not able to focus, and she got pretty upset about it. And then later on, she approached me and she told me, no, there's nothing like that. She approached the boy's mother, who had actually disclosed it to me, and you could tell from the body language, that there was a very nasty argument, or something like a very serious talk that was taking place between the two ladies. So I never got my answer until at the age of 14. When I was 14 years old, that's when my father sat me down and told me, look, this is what it is. This is how you came in, and we adopted you. And I was like, I already know that. I was only 8 when I got to know that. So he was pretty much surprised. In fact, when you read my book, you'll be able to know that I have mentioned the same thing over there. And there are a lot of mixture of feelings that come into you as a person.
You mentioned about internal adoption.
Yes. Apparently, my adopted father happens to be my grandfather. If I would narrate it further, my biological father is the nephew to my adopted father. So my adopted father adopted his nephew's child. So I'm his grandchild.
Without knowing, or?
He knew about it. He knew about it.
So he knew you?
Yeah, he knew me.
When you were 6 months old?
Yes. No, he got to know about me when I was still not in the world, because like I said, my mother was not so comfortable having 5 kids to handle, and they were not so well off. So me being the 6th one, she was wondering how she was going to take care of all of them. So she decided she didn't want me. So apparently when my grandmother got to know that, she sent a telegram to Kenya, Kitale, and informed my father that there was a child coming now. My father didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, but he knew there was a child coming his way. It's right before I came.
Wow.
Yeah.
At what age did you find out the whole story?
If you really ask me honestly, I got to know everything when I was only 6 years old. You can tell from the way people treat you, from the way your next of kin family members treat you, the way your uncles and aunties and cousins treat you is totally different. It's like you're the odd one out. If there's anything that is happening that is not right, you're blamed for it. Somebody falls down, you're the one who pushed him or her. You never ate your food well, you do not have manners because you do not belong to that family. Or you're in that family because you're so-and-so is so rich, XYZ is so rich, so you've come to take over, to take possession. And they become so nasty and so negative about you that life becomes difficult, I can say.
Oh. Sheikh Abu Najma, tell us about your experience before the age of 6, before being taken in by the children's department and walking into the children's home. How was it? How did it happen?
MashaAllah. I can't remember much, but according to the files of the government that is with the children's department, is that in my case there was a separation between my mother and my father. And there was a quarrel, they had a quarrel, then my mother had to live with me. She left with me. Then I was placed in a place where it was kind of a daycare, in Pumwani. And there is when, some neighbors, my mother used to come and check me out every day, check out how I was faring and what. Then the neighbors, they used to say that there is this mother who is raising up kids that are not, her kids. So that is how the children department got this information. And this happened after a long time where my mother did not come. And I heard that maybe she was jailed or something happened to her. So that is where the children's department came and they took me from the place where I was in Pomwani, and they took me to this orphanage. It's, you know, sometimes I don't like to read what happened and exact, you know, what happened there. I just like to leave it at that. But as far as I'm concerned, that is what I can remember. Because the whole files, I can remember I was taken to that orphanage by the children's department. And I remember when I was young, I used to go to the courts, like monthly basis. There was a case, you know, between my guardians and the children's department. So finally, I was, you know, I was removed from this guardian and taken to this children's department. From children's department to this orphanage. Because in those days you could not go to, you could not be taken in any children's home unless you come through the children's department or the government.
Wow. Wow. Any news about, any follow-up about your parents after that?
You see, there's some things that, you know, in Islam we learn about qadr, you know, the decree of Allah. And what Allah writes for any human being is best for them. And I believe that what Allah wrote for me and what I should go through is good for me. And I'm not the only one. I was just thinking of a story of Nabi Yusuf. Nabi Yusuf he was a prophet of Allah. And he was thrown inside this big well, deep hole. And after that, he was brought in Egypt. So he was like adopted by this very rich family from Egypt. The same happened to Nabi Musa. You know, he was adopted from the young age. From the young age, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not want Nabi Musa to grow up with his parents. You know, he wanted for Nabi Musa a different environment. And why did Allah want this? So that when Nabi Musa will become, you know, in future when he grows, he becomes big, then he can be able to at least, you know, in order for him to become a prophet, that is what he had to go through. So I believe what I went through is what made me who I am. And number two, Allah says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tasalu an ashiya'a. You know, don't ask about things. In tubda lakum tasuhum. If you search for it much, then it's going to annoy you. You know. And the last thing here is, you know, even I tell, you know, during my motivational speeches, you know, in my dawah programs, I always tell people that, you know, don't look into the past. You know, don't look into the past. You know, life is about moving forward. You know, there is no time of going back. And if somebody, you know, they truly, you know, they cared about you, they loved you, then they would search for you wherever you are. You know. But the fact that, you know, all those years, you know, nobody has ever cared to look and search for you. You know, then...
These are just... Wow.
Yeah.
Quite a sensitive topic, ladies and gentlemen, and we just had their stories. People we see, we celebrate on TVs and in different programs, seminars, conferences, to name but a few. On the second segment, when we come back, we're going to look at more into why Farhan wrote the book. He spoke about the unfair treatment. We'd like to know more about that. We'd want to know more about Abu Najm's psychological journey when in that particular orphanage. How was it? But all these after the break. Don't go away. We're going to be back in a moment.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Everyone has a journey. Just because I empathize with yours doesn't mean I don't have one. just learn how to work around it. Similarly, everyone has a story. Brother Farhan,
Yes.
tell us about the book. Why did you decide to write the book? What inspired you to write the book?
See, what actually inspired me to write this book was the number of people I interacted with. Ever since you could say I grew up, I got married, and I came across a lot of adopted children who were facing a lot of different issues that were somehow connected to mine, but they didn't have any direction, they didn't have a way to speak it out. And that's when, like, there's a very famous saying in English that charity begins from home. So I decided to write this book, and I decided to include myself in it because I'm also adopted, and I use that as my strength. I've never used adopted being my weakness. When I was a child, I used that as my weakness. I used to feel sorry for myself, but with the age going by and with the days going by, I came to realize that this was my strength, and I was supposed to make the most out of it. I was supposed to maybe, by Allah's will, I was supposed to maybe empower the adopted children through this book and through this information, so that they can be able to get some insight and maybe get inspired and stand for themselves, and stop pitting themselves and expecting the world to treat them fairly.
Few keywords you mentioned: pitting themselves, stand for themselves.
Yes.
You saw it as a weakness when
Yes.
you're growing up.
Yes.
All related in a way.
Yeah.
Tell us about your growing up.
Well, as a child, I was not allowed to have friends, not in a negative way, but my parents were too possessive. They were afraid that if I made friends, I would know the truth, and they didn't want me to know that when I was young. So I was not allowed to go out, I was not allowed to have friends, I was only going to school, coming back, and that's it. That was my life. So you can imagine being with a generation gap in your house. Like, my parents were way older than me, trying to understand what I was going through, and me trying to understand what they were going through were two different keys and sectors. And I was expected to be quiet. I was expected to be obedient. We as children, we expect, we as parents obviously want our children to be obedient, but there's some things that go through your will. You do not agree with it, but just because you're adopted, you have to agree to it, which is not fair. For example, I remember I dropped out when I was in class 8, and the reason why I dropped out was that my father was told that you're a successful businessman, so why are you educating this boy? You brought him here so that he could help you out. So why are you educating and wasting your money on him? So that's how I dropped out. And then after that, my mother never gave up on me. She hired a private tutor. I enrolled. I applied for an index number. I got an index number, and I did my KCPE privately. But during the exams, I had to go to school. But during the study period, I was at home. So that's how I finished my KCPE. Going to high school was again another hassle for me because no one wanted me to go to high school. Same to college. I had to struggle and make my way out.
Is it something that happened with all the children, or it's simply because you're adopted?
It adoption is used here in a very negative aspect, because being adopted, I think the expectations from the adoptee's family is so high. Like I said, you're expected to be the perfect child. You're not supposed to say no, you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to say, yeah, it's day, it's night. So most adopted children do face that. Most of them do.
Farhan,
Yes.
were you the only child in the house?
Initially, I was not the only child. I grew up with cousins, but when they left, I was the only child in the house.
And how was it being with cousins who know that you're adopted?
It's difficult because you're not treated the same way. Like, there's always, you're the black sheep in between that flock. So it was not easy for me. Maybe it was not easy for them, I could say. It was easy for me because I was very young, and I never knew what the truth was at that time. They knew what the truth was, and maybe they had a difficult time accepting and adjusting to me in their group. When they left for higher education to very good schools in Nairobi and abroad. And I was left back home in Kitale, and that's where I completed my primary and secondary education before I moved to Nairobi. So I would say that I had a very nice time with my cousins, and I will definitely say they were wonderful people to grow up with. But unfortunately, we could not spend more time with each other, and they had to move out.
Nice. We are going to talk about your uncles and your reaction and the family relatives and how you met your parents in a few.
Right.
But first, Abu Najma, growing up, 100 children, same place, limited resources. How was it?
Wallahi, you know, the early days, you know, you are taken to this orphanage which had so many children. It was not normal. It was not normal, and it was not easy. And you see, this concept of children's home is not there in Islam. Basically, in Islam, if, for example, any child does not have parents, Islam says that any Muslim should, you know, adopt them and raise them in their homes so that they can learn, you know, the Islamic manners, you know, they can be loved, they can be taken good care of. But basically, there the children's home, we are dealing with, you know, workers, people who have been employed to take care of you. You see, and most of the people who are the workers there, you know, they were, you know, doing their jobs.
Paid to love you. They don't love you from their heart. They're paid to love you.
Yeah, you see, and that was the hardest part. And also, you know, you struggle with the, you know, with the self-identity. You don't know, you know, it's like you've been cut. So you're trying to find your new self, and you're trying to adapt with the other children. You know, it was a very, very confusing moment, And I always thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because, you know, we used to go to madrasa at a very young age. And I remember I used to love Surah Al-Duha, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. You know, and many children who were not raised up by their families, they love this surah because this surah is a hope for the hopeless, and it gives hope to the orphans. Alam yajidika yatiman fa'awa. You know, we found you as an orphan, then we gave you a place to stay. Wajadaka dhalan fahada. You know, we found you, you were lost, and then we guided you. You know, so alhamdulillah, yani, we used to read Quran. You know, you go to madrasa, you know, and you find hope in Quran. You know, Quran, when you are young, the Quran has you know, the rhythm. You know, there is hope. We could not understand Quran, but me, I basically found hope in the Quran, you know, in going to madrasa and reading Quran. But basically, when you come back at the orphanage, it was not easy. It was not easy. I know even some children who were brought in the orphanage, then they used to run away. You know, even some, they ran away, they became chokoras. They became chokoras. You know, because, you know, you refuse.
You don't accept your status.
Yeah, you refuse to be there. Some children, they used to, some, you know, you live in the orphanage, but now you start to rebel. You know, it's like the famous guy who said, "It's me against the world." You know, so you're trying to fight with everyone. You know, you're against everything. You know, you don't want to cooperate with the workers there. You know, it was very, very difficult.
Tell us about your psychological journey when growing up in such a setup.
Wallahi, it was not easy. Me, alhamdulillah, you know, many children that we grew up with there, me, I can say my situation was a little bit better because since at a very early age, alhamdulillah, I was very friendly. And I had many friends outside. So whenever I used to get a chance, I used to go out and play with my friends. You know, you sneak, you spend time with friends and come back in the orphanage. So I think if there is anything that really helped me, you know, to become a normal person, you know, behave like normal people who came from normal families and they are just okay, it was that. You know, I used to sneak, I play with my friends, you know, football, and sometimes we played basketball, you know, and we spent time together. You know, I can't say that like most of my weekends.
Distractions most of the time. You got
yes, I got distractions, and
you always found areas of comfort.
Yeah, yeah, but it was not easy. It was not easy. It was not easy. It was not easy. You know, sometimes even you get sick. I remember when I was young, I was very, very sick. I was sick like for 3 months. And you know, you don't receive, I don't remember anybody telling me, you know, you'll get well, you know, we love you, you'll recover, you know, things will be better. Just like the way now, alhamdulillah, I have, my children have finished high school. And the way I've raised them, you know, with love, with care, you know, comforting words and what. Those are the things that I don't remember I got these kind of words. Even, you know, just someone telling you like, you know, they love you and you mean something to them and, you know, you belong to us and what. It was not
something you missed.
Something which wasn't there, not even missing, something which wasn't there. And in fact, sometimes, you know, you get very discouraging words like, you know, you should thank God that you are here. Others like you, ni chokora. So you thank that you are here.
I second that. I second that, because even me, being in a very good family, I used to encounter such words more often, because you know, if human is prone to error, that's what I believe. No one is perfect, so you end up making a mistake and you're blamed. Your DNA is blamed.
Where were those words coming from? From who exactly?
From you know, I wouldn't want to mention personal names.
Is it extended? Because
but
that's what I want to touch on.
It's on the extended family.
Extended family.
Yes.
How was your relation with the extended family? That was just my question that you preempted. How was your relation with the extended family?
I will say that partially.
That, just to build up on the question.
Yes.
Based on the fact that you've told us your adopted father was a successful businessman.
Yes.
You know, so the brothers and the surrounding cousins and the uncles would want to associate themselves more with your father.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And benefit maximally from him, right?
Right.
Now, you coming into the picture, definitely not a good sign.
No, it was definitely a sign of something big, a big storm their way, some sort of insecurity, because the attention was being divided now.
Yes.
And so I was always like I said, the black sheep in the flock. For no matter whether I was placed on the elder side or on the younger side, I would always be considered being the one who was at fault. You know, when I was growing up, I remember when I was hitting my adolescence, I had a mindset that whatever I would do, I would not be successful in it, and whatever I did was wrong. If I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, for example, that was a mistake for me. That's what I would consider. Because I was always told, you're not capable of studying, you're not capable of doing this, you're not capable of doing that, you are not supposed to make friends, you're not capable of handling friendships, you're not capable of handling relationships, you know, we just brought you in. So I would hear that from the extended family more often, and that used to tear me apart. Because I used to wonder, I try and do my level best as a child. So where is it that I'm wrong? So those, you know, the period between, I would say, 11 years to, say, 16 years, if you met me, I was a very different person. I mean, me having, today, being able to speak before all of you is maybe just a gift from Allah Ta'ala. Otherwise, it was very difficult. I remember when I would go to events, I would be behind my mother or behind my father, hiding. I was not confident enough to speak. And the reason why I was not confident enough to speak was because my confidence was shattered, was ruined at a very early stage. You know, like Sheikh just said, you know, when you have children and you're raising them up, it's how you nourish them, it's how you plant the information that they need in their minds. They need to have a mindset. And when you are growing up and you're told that you're not capable, you're not, you know, you're this, you're that, you're given all sorts of titles, you're labeled a snake, you will end up thinking, okay, this is what that's how my life was supposed to be, maybe. But then when I got into high school, and when I got, you know, when I reached my third form and my fourth form, and when I had to drop out again in Form 3, I dropped out in school twice. One in class 8, second in Form 3. That was a big blow to me, because that is when my eyes opened up properly, and I was like, no. If I do not wake up, if I do not stand for myself, if I do not convince my parents, nobody will do that for me. So Farhan, you have to do it. I started doing a lot of self-speaking. Somebody would think I'm mad. I would stand in the mirror and say, hey, gentleman, you know what? You look good. Okay. You know what, Farhan? You're capable of doing this. You know what? That formula in maths, you can solve it. Okay? The wave in the physics, oh, of course, it's just a passing wave. This is the formula, fx, well, whatever it was anyway. So let's not get into detail into that. But yeah, it was so difficult for me as a child to overcome my feelings and emotions. But I had to do it, and I had to fight it alone because, like I said, I had never had any siblings. I never had any friends. So just similarly how Sheikh found comfort in sneaking out, I found comfort in writing, and that's how this writing is somehow connected, because the information that I've provided here is part of, there's a connection between this book and my childhood. So,
nice.
Yes.
The book he's talking about is none other than this one. This is the book he authored. We are talking about Farhan Yusuf and Sheikh Abu Najma. People you see, we celebrate in our respective fields. We don't know their journey. As we said, everyone has a journey. Just because I empathize with yours doesn't mean I lack one. Just found a way to work around it. We're going to be back after this extremely very short break to hear more from them, his message to the world, a chapter in this book. And Sheikh Abu Najma said the concept of orphanage is not in Islam, but people should adopt. But on the other hand, these are the challenges we're facing in adoption. What to do? Where do we go from here? All this after this short break.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Farhan,
Yes.
chapter 3 of the book is talking about meeting your biological parents.
Yep.
How was it?
I will say it was not a wonderful experience. It was very traumatizing for me to meet them, and especially with, I was not really interested in meeting my parents, I'll be very honest with you.
At what age was that?
It was at the age of 16. I was turning 17 by then. So apparently I was not happy, or I was not excited, you would say, to meet my parents, because I think the time when I really needed to know who they were, I was not provided with the right information. So with the time, like what he just said, that you don't dig into the past, you move on. So to me, when I got to know about my parents in a more detailed perspective, what excited me more was that I had siblings, something that I lacked in my family here. So I wanted to know, I was very curious to know who my brothers and my sisters were, how they were they looking like me, did we look alike, did we share the same experiences, or rather, the same kind of hobbies and stuff, or they were totally different people. So that's when my father took the decision to send my mom from Kenya alongside with me back to Pakistan and meet my family. And I remember my mother, my biological mother, my biological grandmother, and an uncle and my sister coming to receive me from the airport. So, even at that particular time, the expectations were so high from their side as well. You see, as a child, for me, it was like I was expected to be the perfect happy-go-child from this end and from that end too. So when I met my family,
serious pressure.
Exactly, a lot of pressure. When I met my mother for the first time, she expected me to hug her and go crying, but she doesn't realize that this child has not spent time with her. I never even got to suckle her milk. When I was born, I was put on tea. So I'm a chai fan.
Oh.
You give me chai any time of the day, I'll have it very nicely. I don't know what milk.
Anytime is tea time.
Anytime is tea time, and tea is the best time. So basically, she expected me to hug her, to get emotional, which I did not. Apparently, it was the opposite. She hugged me, she got emotional, she got she got carried away. And I remember I was standing there just as good as a stone, just looking at her, blunt. I was totally blunt. I didn't know how to react. Was I supposed to hug her? Because if I would hug her, then what would my mother on the other end, who has raised me, think about it? So you see, I was in between two mothers, whereby, my biological mother and my adopted mother. I was trying to be fair to both of them. I did not want to treat anyone highly and lowly. But then I was not excited. But when I met my sister, I was very happy to meet her, and she was very warm and welcoming for the first time. My older sister was married by then, and she had kids, and she had her own family. So when I got into the house, my brothers were not welcoming at all, and I did not expect that.
Wow.
Yeah, because they thought, they thought here is a guy from abroad, educated.
Really?
They don't know how I completed my education. So here is a guy who's come in from abroad, He's educated, he can speak fluent English, and he's wearing good clothes. What we were just discussing a while ago, people judge you according to what you wear, how you talk, what you use. So they were distant. They didn't want to talk to me much. And my older sister, obviously being married, she never cared. She had her own responsibilities. So I bonded with my second sister. Apparently that turned out to be nasty as well later on, because she became so demanding. She would accuse me of not treating the biological mother equally to what I was treating my adopted mother. But you know what I keep saying, even today when I have a family meeting and maybe I'm addressing this issue, I usually tell them, you all expected me to play certain roles and responsibilities, but you do not want to place yourself in my shoes and try and understand my psychology, that I never grew up with you people. So to me, you were mere strangers. Similarly, I was a stranger to you. So if you would accept that fact, you would stop accusing me.
Wow. It's quite difficult to accept, obviously.
It's very difficult to accept. From both ends, there are a lot of challenges that people face. But yeah, like I said, the meeting was not very pleasant. My biological mother would get very overprotective when I would speak to my adopted mother. And my adopted mother would of course feel insecure when I would speak to my adopted mother, to my biological mother. They were all related. But you see, I felt so divided. I felt like I was a different piece here, and I was a different piece here. I was a different piece there, and I was a different piece there. So I really felt divided, and that's why I didn't enjoy it. Oh. The only part I can say I enjoyed was where I met my wife.
Wow.
15 years ago.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. That was the only pleasant part of that trip.
You met her in Pakistan?
Yes.
Interesting. Story for another day. Sheikh Abu Najma, you told us you always ran away and found out comfort and all that. Now, you are here. Kuna wengine walikimbia and turned out to be chokoras, street kids, as you've told us. Apart from running away and finding comfort zones and loving madrasa, what else contributed to your uprightness that you turned out to be compared to the rest?
Okay, Alhamdulillah, I believe, number one is that what built me today and what made me to become Abu Najma is what I faced during those early days. And I take it positively. And just like I told you, is that Alhamdulillah, Allah blessed me to be loved by people, and also I was a very friendly person. I know how to make friends with others, and whenever every home that I went to, my friend's home, I used to make sure that they would love me and they would wish that I'm one of them. So that is how most of the time I used to survive. I used to hang around with friends, and even some of the closest people in my life, they never believed that, I was one of the kids who lived in that orphanage. Because I always tended to be different. I never put myself down. Even up to this moment and this minute, I always put myself. I never put myself down. I always. You see, I believe that the success in life is that people should not know. You should not reveal weakness to human beings. Your weakness only should be revealed to Allah, but not to other humans. Because at the end of the day, maybe there are others who have passed more difficult times than you. You see? So basically it is, how you look is what's the most important thing. Because I've seen that some of the children who we were raised up with together in the orphanage, some of them, this thing has affected them until this moment, and some of them died because of those kind of thoughts. They married, they were not able to live good marriage lives. And I remember there is another case of another brother, we were raised up together. He got married, then after some time he became a big chokora, he died. then the kid died, then the wife died. Then now the whole family is not there. You see? So in life, you have to be strong. You have to be strong and you have to move on. And, they said that the most successful people today are those who went through very difficult times. I was telling my brother here is that Steve Jobs, he was also adopted. The real parents, when he was born, they put him for adoption. And he was raised up by a different family. And alhamdulillah, look at his achievements. In Apple company and many, he died as a billionaire.
True.
You see, so it's not, where we come from, which I do not like to focus on that very much. It's where we are heading. And that is why I always enjoy what I do. I go to schools, I talk to students, It's like I'm trying to do to them things that was never done for me. Nobody ever told me, education is important, you need to work hard in school, about careers, career choices, helping the young people make the right choices. Whatever I did or I'm doing right now, it was never there in my life. It was never there during our days in the 80s. When we were growing up in the 80s, we never had, career workshops.
Yeah.
We never had motivational speakers. I never even, heard of any Islamic rally. So alhamdulillah, the things that we are doing today, it was not there before. And maybe that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made me go through, that.
So that you inspire these
So that
young
I do what I do today.
Yes, mashallah.
You see, and that is why I always tell you, Brother Faisal, is that let the sheikhs be sheikhs and ulamas and big scholars. Mine, I don't consider myself as a sheikh, ulama, or these big scholars that are very famous. I would just like to be known by, Abu Najma is someone who motivates others, He works with the youth, he helps them make the right choices. Of course, I use Quran, I use Hadith, I use psychology, but mine is to give them what I was not given. And because I'm strong, if I talk about patience, then I pass through that. If I talk about, forbearing, if I talk about, there is nothing that, I have not gone through. I'm not like that much motivational speakers, people who read books and then they
come out and
empty words. I pass through everything. So when I talk to students, they feel me. And that is why they always respond to. Because talking
from experience.
Talking from experience, which I think is very, very important for the kind of activity that I do.
Wow. That makes more sense. Why you don't want to be called a sheikh.
No.
It makes perfect sense. Brother Farhan,
Yes.
your message to the world. Please integrate it with your message to other adopted children.
Sure. To begin with, I would say that we all have journeys in life and we all have a purpose in life. And it is for us to discover the purpose, obviously with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once your purpose is over, you're no more. Your life comes to an end. So when you're still in the world, you should understand the fact that you have a purpose that you're trying to serve. I just like what our brother, I will not call him Sheikh now, just commented, about motivational speaking. I also do a lot of motivational speaking, just like him. I think we adopted children have that gift that, we try and provide what we could not get in our times. He's very right by saying that in the 80s we had nothing. There was absolutely nothing, because even I'm an 80s child. And it was difficult, to conquer and to be told, to be guided, to have career choices and stuff compared to the world and society today. However, coming back to the message is that we all have problems. We all have difficulties. We have to overcome them. We have to use our weaknesses and convert them into our strengths. As a child, I was labeled adopted. I was adopted. I felt bad about it. I could not do anything about it. But then when I grew up, I accepted that as my strength. And today I am here. I am what I am because I'm adopted. And that is my purpose in life. So try and use your situations to empower not only yourself, but do it for others as well. Try and do something, because we all have a story to share. When we share it positively, we try not only to lighten our hearts, but we also try and enlighten other people. they get to know, a little bit of something, useful that could help them. I remember having a few cases of suicide, and that's the reason why I said we all have a purpose in life. A lot of people feel like, and especially the youth today, mental illness is on the rise, and a lot of youngsters want to commit suicide. First of all, we must realize one thing, that life is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have no right to end it on our own unless our Creator decides to. Yeah? Attempts to suicide, such kind of things only destroy your inner self, your inner peace. You will not die until your purpose is over. So try and analyze the purpose. Try and understand the journey of your life. Once you understand that this is my journey, these are my difficulties, these are my achievements, and this is what I have to face, this is what I have to conquer, life will be a little bit easier, in the sense you will be able to understand yourself more and understand other people more, better.
Wow. Wow. Strong message right there. Sheikh Abu Najma, your message to the world. And before going to the message, your message to the world, you mentioned there's no system in Islam prescribed regarding the orphanage, that people should focus more on adoption. What's your message to those who are making adoption a bit challenging? Like, for example, in his case, being thrown away, the extended family problems. What's your message to such Muslims also then?
Naam, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You see, basically, the Quran says that anybody who oppresses the orphans, like he said that, about the wealth, some orphans, their fathers, they had a lot of money, but when they grow up, they lose that money through the uncles, the aunties. Allah says in the Quran, Inna ladina kuluna amwala liyatama, those who eat the property of the orphans, innama yakuluna fi butunihim nara, they are eating fire of hell. And in another verse, Allah says that وَلَا تَأْكُلُ أَمْوَالَ الْيَتَامَ يَتِيمٍ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي أَحْسَنَ. I'm losing the verse, but basically the verse says that do not eat the property of the orphans, except in a good way. In a good way, you invest that money, then when they grow up, you give it back to them. كَلَّا بَلَا تُكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمِ. Allah is saying that the society does not care about the orphans. In Islamic system, we should not have like children's home as a permanent place for orphans to live. The Muslim society in Kenya, they should go to this children's home and share these babies, adopt these babies. Let these babies live with you. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ana wa kafilul yatim, I and the one who raises the orphans, hataini fil jannah. He did his fingertips like this. The Prophet didn't say, here he was talking about adaptation, raising up the orphan. That the children's home should be temporary. Why? Because in this children's home, they cannot receive the love that they want. They cannot receive the guidance that they need. They cannot receive the counseling that you see, and it was written on the Nation newspaper that there was a research by the Nation newspaper that many people who are opening up these orphanages right now, they're opening them for economical gains, and for economical reasons. So people are opening up these orphanages so that they can become rich. They can use those kids to become rich and millionaires. You see, so the Islamic system is that all Muslims, they should think of, especially the rich and the well-off in our society, they should think of taking these children from the orphanage and put them in their houses. Where I grew up, I remember there are some kids who they became robbers, and they were shot down and they died. Some of the girls, they made bad choices, and now they are in maqabir, they're in their graves. So me, I would not like anyone to grow up in an orphanage. It's not the right place. But the orphanage should be temporary. It should be temporary. Should be temporary. Because I remember even sometimes, you wake up and food is finished. Food is finished. So if you are not like me, you would go out and eat at your friend's house, then you sleep hungry. Because there is a certain time that you're supposed to be there and eat. If you are not there at that time, you sleep hungry. And there are some kids that who are, they didn't have the self-esteem, the self-confidence that maybe we had, it's at a very young age. So they used to sleep hungry. So it's not the right place. So Muslim community, indeed, if we say we are Ahli Sunnah, we love the Prophet, we know the Sahabas, we are good Muslims, we follow Quran, then we should think of how are we going to adopt the orphans in these children's homes? How are we going to mix them with our own children? Because the Prophet ﷺ said that the most beloved house is the house that has an orphan. And even we are told that if you put your hands on the hair of an orphan, your heart will become soft. You see? But that's not there nowadays. Mashallah, we like to insist of, keep your beard, wear hijab and gloves and this, outer appearance. But, talking about the orphans and how, treat
the orphans
treating, you cannot hear this. Anything that is financial is really avoided by the Ummah here.
Should you expect your books on Sheikh?
Wallahi, inshallah, in the process.
Inshallah. Thanks so much. Farhan,
Yes.
where can this books be found?
For now, they are with the Writers and Guild. They are the publishers of this book.
Yes.
And we are in the process of putting them in the bookshelves, maybe at the textbook center, wherever I get the opportunity. I am just mentioning that. But wherever I get the opportunity, the rule was that the book has to be launched and should be in the market for at least 7 to 8 months before it qualifies to be at the bookshelves. So now that the book has been going around and it has also been nominated,
yes,
I'm in the process of doing that, and I will also be putting it on Amazon, inshallah.
Inshallah. It's worth mentioning that this book was nominated in the Excellent Achievement Awards in the UK the year 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, quite a sensitive topic that we've had immense lessons coming from this amazing gentleman talking from their experiences. I have nothing else to add because my director at the back, Fauzia, is keep on pushing me and pushing and pushing, wanting me to end this show. Horizon TV Kenya is our Facebook and Instagram page. At Horizon TV Kenya is our Twitter handle, and 40497 is our SMS line. See you next week, same place, same time. I have been your host, Faisal Kassim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.